The feeder in your yard is not what you think it is. You see a tube of seed, a perch, a roof against the rain. The birds see something else entirely. For 30 consecutive days, I placed a camera on a single feeder and recorded every visit, every approach, every refusal, every hesitation. What that camera caught across 1 month was not a story about food. It was a story about trust. Most people assume birds choose a feeder based on what's in it. The seed type, the freshness, the feel level. The reality is far more specific, far more personal, and far stranger than most people realize. There are 6 things a bird measures before it commits to a feeder, and only one of them has anything to do with the seed. There is a behavior the camera caught on the 4th day that I did not understand until the 3rd week. And there is a single change I made on day 19 that doubled the number of species visiting the feeder within 48 hours. Welcome back to Birds Are Watching. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to learn will change the way you look at every bird that visits your yard. Stay until the end. What 30 days of footage finally revealed about why a bird trusts a feeder is not about the feeder at all. And the moment I understood it is the moment I think you will not forget either. Tonight, we are going into the trust. The hidden day-by-day process through which a feeder in your yard stops being a piece of equipment and starts being a place that specific birds have chosen. Number 1. The position they were watching from before they ever landed. In the first 3 days of footage, almost no bird landed on the feeder, but the camera caught dozens of them sitting in a specific tree, 22 feet away, watching. This is the perch a bird uses to audit a new food source before risking contact. Research from the British Trust for Ornithology and the Cornell lab has documented this assessment perch as a near-universal first stage of feeder acceptance. The bird is timing the yard, watching for predators, watching for human movement patterns, watching for the behavior of other birds. What the footage made undeniable is that the bird on that assessment perch was not just looking at the feeder, it was looking at the house. Every minute or two, the bird's head would turn from the feeder to the kitchen window, to the back door, and back to the feeder. The feeder was the destination. The house was a variable. If you have a tree within 20 to 30 feet of your feeder, and you have ever seen a bird sitting in it, doing apparently nothing, that bird was almost certainly auditing you. Number 2, the distance to cover changed everything. On day 6, I moved the feeder, not far, 18 inches closer to a holly bush. Within 48 hours, the number of visits per day on the camera doubled. This is not coincidence. It is something researchers at Cornell's Project Feeder Watch have documented across millions of observations. Birds will not commit to a feeder that does not have cover within a short, escapable flight. The Cornell Lab's published guidance specifies 10 to 12 feet from dense vegetation as the optimal feeder placement. What the footage showed me is that the difference between a feeder bird's visit cautiously and a feeder bird's visit confidently is often measured in inches, not feet. A feeder 15 feet from cover gets visits. A feeder 8 feet from cover gets a community. The seed did not change. The schedule did not change. The birds did not suddenly become hungrier. What changed was the distance to safety. And the moment that distance became survivable in a single panicked wing beat, the feeder became a place worth returning to. Number 3. The mistake I had been making with the seed. For the first 8 days, I used a standard wild bird seed mix from the grocery store. The camera caught something I had not noticed in years of casual observation. Birds were arriving, birds were landing, and birds were leaving with most of the mix scattered on the ground beneath them. The mix was mostly milo, red millet, and cracked corn fillers, that the most common feeder species, according to Project Feeder Watch data tracked across millions of bird visa records, will actively reject. On day 9, I switched to black oil sunflower seed. The next morning, the camera showed cardinals at the feeder for the first time in 8 days. Chickadees stayed twice as long per visit. A pair of house finches began appearing in the afternoon. The lesson the footage taught me, more clearly than any guide could have, was this: a feeder full of the wrong seed is not a feeder. It is a frustration the birds learn to fly past. The change was inexpensive. The result was immediate. Number 4. The cleaning that changed who came back. On day 12, I cleaned the feeder for the first time on camera. Hot water, a 1:2 solution of white vinegar and water, a thorough scrub, a full rinse, a dry. What the footage caught over the next several days was something I had not anticipated. The first visitors after the cleaning were not the regular birds. They were new species. The National Audubon Society and multiple veterinary ornithology programs have linked feeder hygiene directly to disease transmission, salmonellosis, trichomoniasis, aspergillosis, and to the willingness of healthy birds to use a contaminated site. Birds, it turns out, can detect the chemical signatures of disease at a feeder, long before a human eye registers anything wrong. Once the camera recorded feeder was clean, 2 species that had been visible in the yard, but absent from the feeder began to visit. A tufted titmouse on day 14, a white-breasted nuthatch. On day 15, the feeder had not been bad enough to drive away the established regulars, but it had been bad enough to keep the cautious species out entirely. Number 5. The water they drank before they ate. On day 17, I added a small ceramic bowl of fresh water to the platform beneath the feeder. What the camera caught over the next week reorganized what I thought a feeder was for. Birds drank before they ate. Almost every species visiting the feeder, in over 60% of the recorded visits, approached the water first 10 to seed, then the water again before leaving. This pattern is documented in research from the Cornell Lab on multi-resource feeding stations, which has found that the presence of accessible water increases total feeder visits per day by between 30 and 40% across most North American species. The water was not a supplement to the feeder, it was completing it. What I had thought was a place birds came to eat turned out to be a place they came to live for a few minutes. Drink, eat, drink, rest, leave. The water turned the transaction into a stay. But what comes next is the part of the 30 days of footage that I did not understand until I went back and watched the early clips a second time. Number 6. The thing they were trusting all along. I want you to think about something for a moment. Across 30 days, I made 5 changes to the feeder. I moved it closer to cover. I switched the seed. I cleaned it. I added water. I refilled it on a consistent morning schedule. The cumulative effect was a roughly 4-fold increase in daily bird visits, and an increase from 3 regularly visiting species to 9. But when I went back to the first week of footage and looked at the birds who came anyway, despite the bad seed, the bad placement, the dirty feeder, and the missing water, I noticed something I had missed. They were all looking at the same spot. Every bird that came in those first uncertain days, between the seed tossing and the brief grab-and-go visits, turned its head, mid-feed, toward the same window of the house. The kitchen window. The window I stood at every morning, filling the coffee maker, watching them. What the camera had been recording, in the parts of the footage that looked the least interesting, was a slow process of birds learning the shape of a specific human in a specific window, on a specific schedule, with specific movements that did not result in danger. The seed, the placement, the cleaning, the water, all of it mattered, but the variable the birds were actually solving for was me. The feeder was a constant, the yard was a constant, the seed and the cover and the water could all be adjusted. The unknown that took 30 days to resolve was the human at the window. Be they 30. What the camera caught was not a feeder, with birds at it. It was a yard in which a small population of wild animals had collectively decided that the figure visible through the kitchen glass was the kind of presence they could live alongside. The feeder was the meeting point, but the trust was in me. The next time you walk past a window in your house and a bird at your feeder does not flush, remember what you now know. It is not the feeder the bird is committing to. It is the figure behind the glass. You did not know you were the experiment. You did not know you were being measured, but the birds did. And for 30 days, they kept coming back to find out. Tell me in the comments, has there been a moment in your own yard when you realized a specific bird had stopped reacting to you? When it stopped flushing, when it kept eating while you watched, when it stayed put as you opened the door? Tell me about it. What bird was it? How long did it take? I read everyone. I'll see you in the next one.